Welcome to my secret channel Emerald, where I ramble about whatever I feel like in the laziest format possible. So, this is a new series that will be going on for as long as it takes for me to catch up on Index, the light novels. I got into Index through the anime pretty much back in, I think, 2018 when Index 3 started. It got me interested, and I started watching it from the beginning. And I pretty much have just been an anime only, plus like some of the manga. Like I read the Railgun manga, which I probably shouldn't have. I also read the Astral Buddy and the Dark Matter manga, which I probably shouldn't have done before reading New Testament. But I don't think it's that big of a deal. But anyways, I have finally started it. I started reading New Testament. I'll say this: I'm not really much of a light novel guy, but I find myself with each volume enjoying it more and more. I do prefer anime and manga just as a format, but I can see a lot of the benefits of reading light novels. Honestly, light novels to me seem like what you would read if you want the most amount of detail possible and the best understanding of the story. I've actually never really read any light novels before this. The only one I ever read was, I read a little bit of Danganronpa Zero. I never finished it. I did enjoy it, but I just never got around to finishing it. And one thing to clarify is that I actually have read a few of the Old Testament Index volumes. I read 14, 15, 16, 17, and most of 18. So that's just a little bit of background. But yeah, so this is going to be a series where I pretty much just, talk about my opinions on, my observations, and my experience with, while reading New Testament. And I'm going to be doing this in groups of just however many volumes I feel like. So this video is going to be volumes 1 through 7. And yes, I did purposely make this video right before the beginning of the Oathness arc. I've heard great things about the Oathness arc, that it's like most people's favorite arc. So I just decided that I think I'll make a video specifically on that arc once I do actually read it. I hate to have it so hyped up for me because I like to go into anything with low or at least realistic expectations. I am excited to read it though. But yeah, this video is just going to be about volumes 1 through 7, and if I remember, I'll put timestamps in the description of when I talk about each one. So if you just want the complete TLDR, like you don't want to watch the whole video, you just for some reason want to know my extremely general thoughts or my rankings, I think what I'll do is on screen I will put how I would rank each volume. Now I'm not ranking them in the order that I think is best. I'm ranking them just in the order of like how much I liked them. And just so you know, I liked basically all of them. There was only one that I can't fully say I liked, but my ranking would be starting from my least favorite would be New Testament 1. Above that would be New Testament 2. Above that would be 5. Above that would be 3. Above that would be 6. Above that would be 7. And then above that would be 4. New Testament 1 was the only one where I can't fully say that I loved it, but everything after that I really, really enjoyed. And I'm going to be like talking about these pretty much in order. Okay, to start off, New Testament 1. Well, first of all, I started actually taking notes on each volume after, like, starting at New Testament 2. So I don't have any notes for 1, so I'm just going to be speaking pretty generally. So to sum up my opinion on New Testament 1, I would say I loved the character dialogue and interactions and stuff, but I did not really like the action, most of it at least. And the action was like pretty long. It felt like the action scenes were kind of drawn out longer than they should have been. To get the negative stuff out of the way first, because literally the rest of this video will be extremely positive, but I'm not a huge fan of like Hamazura's fights, and in this volume especially, the majority of it seemed like it was Hamazura fighting either like technology or fighting someone that like doesn't really have an ability or anything. And I think what bothered me about it was that you have this crazy gigantic world that is, the world of Index, is Academy City and ever far reaching, and there's so many interesting abilities and like people I would love to see fight, and I can't say that Hamazura fighting like random drones was particularly at the top of that list of fights that I wanted to see. This is not to say I don't love Hamazura as a character, because I love Hamazura as a character. Hamazura, to me, I love his motive a lot. I particularly admire Hamazura's motive because he's someone that was this petty delinquent who has found himself caring for someone, that being Takitsubo, and now his main purpose in life right now is to pretty much turn his life around and provide the best possible life that he can for Takitsubo and build a meaningful long-term relationship. I love that motive a lot. I really like Hamazura because of that. I think it's a great motive for a protagonist. And I will always say that one of my favorite things about Index is the fact that there are actually basically 3 protagonists. And I don't particularly believe that the 3 protagonists, Toma, Hamazura, and Accelerator, I don't think either of them are like the weak link or anything. I think all 3 of them stand on their own as pretty great characters. So yeah, like I love Hamazura as a character, but I will say I didn't really enjoy his fight. So he basically fought a bunch of drones and like random technology, and then he fought like Silver Cross, I think, and then the 5 overs, or a 5 over, not multiple. His fights theoretically can be cool because it's basically like, how can this guy who literally has no power whatsoever like strategize his way to beat this thing that should literally kill him like instantly, right? So like it can be interesting, it can be cool, but in this volume I wasn't really enjoying his fights, and he basically fought like 3 different times. And the one I liked the least was definitely like the 5 over. Honestly, I kind of stopped understanding what was happening. That sounds kind of bad. But yeah, that was my main problem with this volume. Everything after that, everything aside from that, is pretty positive, because I loved a lot of the character writing in this volume. So one of my favorite parts, probably the part that stuck out to me the most, was just Accelerator and Misaka Worst. I need to say, I love Misaka Worst. I think she is hilarious. And specifically with Accelerator, those scenes are pretty funny. So what I liked about it so much was that I think they went to the store together to pick something up, and they had this interesting conversation about how they're simply not meant to live normal lives. Accelerator and Misaka Worst actually feel uncomfortable while trying to live a normal life. They feel uncomfortable when they're not fighting. It seems as if, well, quite literally, I think, they were programmed in a way to feel this way. They were made to have natures where they seek out what they call the darkness, or they seek out violence or conflict. Yeah, that was probably actually my favorite part of the volume. Aside from that, I'm not going to talk about this volume too much, but Fremia is interesting because I did not expect her to actually stay relevant as long as she has. She's, still a very relevant character up to where I've read. And the other day I had the realization that Fremia is more relevant in Index than Frenda is. Or Frenda was, I should say. Another part of this volume I really liked was Kuroyoru Umidori, and I really liked her very short fight that she had with Kinuhara. Both of those characters I really love. I love Kinuhara. I feel like I like her more every single time she appears. I will never get tired of her putting the word super into every single sentence. But yeah, so there was this really interesting sort of contrast between not only Kuroyoru and Kinuhara, but also Kuroyoru, whose name is fun to say, by the way, and Accelerator. I really like how much the Dark Maid project gets mentioned, because I think the Dark Maid project is just super interesting, and I believe it was brought up in the Jailbreaker arc as well, which I really enjoyed. But Kuroyoru and Kinuhara were both a part of that, and it's interesting that they both have similarities to Accelerator in terms of their power and their thought processes and whatnot, yet their abilities are like complete opposites in nature. Kinuhara's is more defensively minded, while Kuroyoru's is more offensively minded, and how that represents Accelerator. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure Kuroyoru is supposed to be a representation of what Accelerator would be like if he had continued down the path he was going with the level 6 shift project, and if he had never met Last Order. I think that's what was going on there. And on top of that, a lot of the conflict in this arc was pretty much about the fact that even though Accelerator believed that he, quote unquote, like destroyed the dark side of Academy City while he was in Russia during World War III, that didn't end up happening because the dark side of Academy City is an inevitable thing that will always exist, pretty much because there will always be people out there with bad motivations and bad desires and whatnot. Kind of like real life. Yeah. You can't just eliminate crime. It's not possible. Outside of that, the volume does end in a cool way that I absolutely predicted. When Kuroyoru like started powering up that attack or whatever, I pretty much knew that Toma was going to be the one to swoop in and save the day. I mean, that was I felt like that was kind of obvious. And that, I believe, is the first time that all three protagonists are ever there face-to-face with each other, which is pretty cool. I could probably talk about this volume a lot deeper, but, you know, I didn't really take notes on it, and it's still my least favorite. I don't see any volume later on being less enjoyable to me than this one, which I still generally liked this volume. There was a lot of good things that I could pull out of it. But I think I'm going to go ahead and move on to Volume 2. When I was reading this, I could have sworn that this arc was going to be called the Radio Sond arc because that's what the whole thing was about. But no, it's called the Homecoming arc because Toma comes home, I guess. Anyways, first of all, I just want to say I love the setup for this volume a lot. It starts off with this gigantic cross just ominously floating up in the air. And I thought it was really cool imagery. I like stuff like that. It's one of the things I love the most about Evangelion is just really cool imagery like that. And so that alone was just a pretty cool start, just from a visual standpoint. But really, the entirety of this volume was pretty much about just explaining the magic system and explaining what God's Right Seat was and how and why they started World War III and about Fiamma of the Right and the aftermath and effects of World War III now that it was over. This volume is actually pretty great for someone like me who didn't read all of the past like Old Testament volumes and didn't really get the proper explanation for a lot of things. I'm not going to go over every little detail, but for me it was very helpful and I found it to be very interesting. And you know, I'm going to say it. A certain magical index may have one of, if not the best power systems in anime, period. The two anime that are always brought up as having the best power systems are pretty much JoJo's with its stands, which I've not seen all of JoJo's, so I can't really say. And then, but most people seem to say the Nen system from Hunter x Hunter. I think that from a purely technical standpoint, yeah, the Nen system it's pretty great. But from a narrative standpoint, I think Indexes is far more interesting. In the first place, you literally have two separate power systems, and there's this whole interesting conflict between these two sides that both have different power systems. And yeah, the science side is a lot more straightforward and relatively easy to understand. The main catch, I guess, is the idea of like personal reality, which I think I talked about in my index video. I'm not going to explain it, but personal reality is a pretty cool thing. But then on the magic side, I think is more interesting. I'm not saying I prefer the magic or science side because I don't care. I like both of them. You need both of them to be good, right? For the series to be good. But the magic side has such an interesting power system because it really is based off of just really interesting concepts. Like you can base your powers off of historical references, mythological references, religious references, all this crazy stuff. And it's so interesting and it fits in with the narrative so well. And on top of that, the politics surrounding the concept of magic is so interesting. I just think that the duality of the science and magic power systems it's very well done. I really do think it adds a lot to the series as a whole. So yeah, like getting clarifications about the magic system and all that explanation, I really enjoyed. I found myself very interested in that. I don't know if everyone else felt the same, but that was my experience. So I want to talk a little bit about like God's Right Seat and Fiamma. I do think that this is a pretty good summary of the purpose of World War III, because World War III was being built up to for quite a while, and I really loved the build up to World War III. That was really well done. I still actually need to read World War III. I've been thinking about going back and reading those later volumes. All I have, unfortunately, is my inferior anime knowledge. Yeah, I guess I don't actually have too much to say about God's Right Seat and Fiamma of the Right. Actually, I think maybe I'll save that for another time, but I thought it was a nice summary for someone like me. And during the whole conversation, they're pretty much building up to what is eventually revealed as Gremlin, which I had heard of Gremlin before reading this. There's a number of things that I've heard about New Testament. I wouldn't say that I've been super spoiled about any arc, really, but I was aware of their name, and the whole thing about them basically just being generally a group of people that weren't happy with the results of World War III, and that's about it. They also explain a lot about what a magic ball is versus what a actual church is, and a church is more kind of like collectively minded. They have like one common purpose that they all share, and you pretty much, if you're part of the church, you need to adopt that. But a magic ball is a lot more individualistic, where it's groups of people that formed because they have something in common, but their goals and motives could be entirely different within the group. There were a few things that I thought were actually really funny about Volume 2, was that I thought it was funny how Index hasn't seen Toma since World War III, or actually he hasn't been back in Academy City in a while. She's just been staying in his dorm or whatever, and he shows up with 10 other girls or something. I thought that was funny. And so they had no alone time. He brought in this group, and then they started talking about serious stuff. And it is so funny to me how little Index is involved with all of these volumes so far. I kind of feel bad for her. Another funny detail was that one thing I loved about it was throughout the conversations, things were still happening in the room, and Sphinx, the cat Sphinx, kept walking up to Lavinia or whatever, and she just without even changing her expression or anything, she would just pick up Sphinx by the neck and toss her, or toss him. Is Sphinx a boy or a girl? I don't remember. And just toss the cat, and just without changing the flow of conversation whatsoever. Those little details I thought were pretty funny. There was also this funny exchange between Lavinia and Fremia, and I took a screenshot of this. I need to read this out loud. It says, as Birdway yelled out, she wrapped her arms around Fremia's waist and performed a German suplex. Yes. And of course, because this is a light novel written by Kazuma Kamachi, he has to also mention that their panties were showing. So thank you, Kazuma Kamachi, for providing that detail. I'm also going to say it. I'm going to make it stand right here. Lavinia Birdway, she's not 12. There is no way, dude. This character is way too knowledgeable and way too intelligent and way too strong. And why is she 12? It makes no sense. I swear you could make Lavinia look the exact same and tell me that she's 20, and I would believe you. I don't know why Kazuma Kamachi writes his characters to be younger than they actually look and act. Also, Lesser, I believe, was mentioned, and she's just spying on them or something, writing notes. I don't know. I love Lesser. I think she's funny. Not gonna lie, last night when I was looking at the illustrations for Volume 8, I got pretty excited because Lesser was on the cover. I love how this girl is willing to seduce men for the sake of nationalism. That's just funny to me. And also, that's just one thing I like about a lot of 2R characters, especially on the magic side, is that they're very nationalistic. That's something I really like. Nationalism is based. Globalism is cringe. Anyways, moving on. Yeah, also, I forgot about this. Kuroyoru was just trapped in the bathroom or something, tied up. I thought that was funny. It is so funny to me when Kuroyoru is just really mad and this everyone out, and no one's taking her seriously. There was also this scene. I don't even know why this was in this volume, but Itsuwa was hitting Tate Miya with a bat because they were trying to impress the people around him, and it just ended up that way. I don't know. That was pretty funny. By the way, when is Itsuwa gonna show up? I need my Itsuwa. I love Itsuwa. She's great, and I'm gonna be sad if New Testament doesn't have any more of her. Let's see. Outside of that, there was a lot of the Kanzaki stuff. I personally love Kanzaki, so seeing her anytime is pretty cool. Basically, she went up on Radio Song or whatever, and I say Radio Song just like sounds really cool. Like the word itself sounds cool, but also just I don't know that I remember liking sort of the atmosphere that I was feeling. That's kind of vague saying it that way, but I guess the atmosphere of Radio Song. I don't know. I found it kind of eerie and I liked it. And then Mjolnir shows up, and I looked up how to pronounce Mjolnir. I sure hope that Google didn't lie to me. And Kanzaki, fought Mjolnir, and it was a fight. It wasn't a super mind-blowing fight or anything, but it was there. I kind of think they just needed like some sort of action, so they kind of just put it in. But because the main purpose of the volume was clearly to clarify some things and summarize some things and explain some things, One of the coolest parts of this volume, maybe my favorite part, was at the very end when Lavinia pretty much like confronted Alistair, like not face to face, but she was talking to Alistair Crowley with the assumption that Alistair Crowley was listening to her. Because to my knowledge, he's essentially like monitoring everything that's like happening in the city, or at least all the major stuff. I know it pops up later in New Testament, but I am very interested in what Alistair Crowley's backstory is going to be. Lavinia pretty much calls out Alistair for the motive behind what he's trying to achieve, which I still don't know at this point, but she says, I'll read it. She says, "I have a feeling your history that let you see the ugly side of the believers of a certain strict Christian denomination and of the modern magical society that claims to have abandoned worldly desires had something to do with it." I feel like I can kind of guess what his backstory is going to be like, and I'm pretty interested to see it, or read it, I should say. I also want to point out that I thought it was really cool how when Lavinia said that, it says that 2 or 3 blonde hairs were unnaturally severed. And then she says, "There's no real reason to strike, had to be only a warning." She said, "I can see your panic in the fact that you did not simply take off my head." Lavinia Birdway radiates Chad energy. She does not care. I love Lavinia Birdway a lot. So far, I think she's been a great character, and I look forward to seeing what she does later on. Outside of that, I don't have too much else to say about New Testament Volume 2. I guess there was a part where Kanzaki, when she, beat Mjolnir, she said she swore to save him/her. I have remembered that this whole time. I don't know if she actually will be the person to do that, but that'd be cool. Anyways, moving on to New Testament Volume 3, the Hawaii Invasion arc. Little fun fact is that after I read this arc, I thought it was outstanding. I thought this arc was really, really solid. And afterwards, I saw this poll on the Index subreddit, and I don't use Reddit hardly at all. I just happened to see it on the rare instance that I did go on there, and it was a poll asking people what they thought the worst volume of New Testament was. And there was only 5 options, so I'm guessing they were just the 5 that most people complain about, I guess. And New Testament 3 was on there, and it got second place. I was like, what? People didn't like this arc? Either way, I'm going to talk about why I really loved the arc. First of all, this is the first time they've gone to America, and can I just say, I absolutely love Japan's idea of what America is like. I think this volume aged extremely well, actually, because I don't know exactly how to say his name, but Roberto Katz, Katze, Katz, I don't know. I just call him Roberto. Roberto is, I find him to be very interesting, very entertaining. I find it so funny that a large part of Roberto's campaign was pretty much his confrontation of the media. It's like, as I was reading it, I couldn't help but think that he was a lot like Donald Trump, honestly, in his attitude and his confrontation of the media, like I said. And this was written 4 or 5 years before the 2016 election, which I just thought was extremely interesting. Roberto exudes this sort of really overconfident aura, And on top of that, he's very proud of his success as like a college, no, not a college, was he a high school dropout or something like that? And then of course he has this like scandalous background and he was pretty much elected not because people think he's smart, but because he exudes this this idea of like a natural born leader who's just kind of a little bit in love with himself. Overall, I found myself really enjoying Roberto's character. I just thought he was such a funny representation of what Cosmo Kamachi viewed as like a type of person that would get elected in America. And outside of just the president, he also made specific note of America being what the largest gun nation. he made it seem like every single citizen just walks around with a gun or something. It's such a funny foreign interpretation of American law. Besides that, one thing I thought that was really interesting was that the American government does not appear to be nearly as knowledgeable about magic as the British government back from the British royal family arc. With the British royal family, magic was ingrained into their government, essentially, especially with the Cortana, like what the Cortana could do by basically powering up their military. And so I was wondering why, in this sense, America was not on the same level. America is, I guess, technically more on the scientific side of things, despite the fact that America is a, I guess, largely, or at least historically, religious country. And so I was wondering why this was the case. And then the reason I came up with was that with the British royal family, your king and queen are there to stay until they die. So they're involved in the government for a very long time. Now contrast that with an American government where elected officials and obviously the president can only serve like a certain amount of time, especially the president, who can only serve basically like 2 full terms of 8 years. Well, technically, I think you can be president for longer than 8 years if, like, I don't know, if the current president dies and you're the vice president after their first year or something, but that's like extremely obscure, right? And so the idea that I came up with was that because elected officials are not there to stay for a very long time, they can't really risk letting all of them know about magic, because as soon as they're gone, they may spill the secrets. But even then, they do know about it, but they don't know hardly anything about it. They just know that something like that exists. If I'm wrong about that, and I missed something, please tell me. And by the way, sorry if you hear this clicking. This is me pressing start and stop on my keyboard. Anyways, to move on from that, I just want to say I did really enjoy Cosmo Kamachi's perspective of what America was like, at least in Index, and I thought it was really interesting and really entertaining, and I ended up really liking Roberto Kotz, and I enjoyed that whole aspect. So yeah, they brought a pretty interesting group from Academy City and whatnot to Hawaii for this arc, and they split up into groups. I believe Toma and Mikoto were together. Hamazura, Kuroyoru, and Misaka Worse were together. That was a funny little trio. And then the overpowered group was Accelerator and Lavinia. So the Sendralin fight, I want to talk about the Sendralin fight. And yeah, okay, I know it's not actually pronounced Sendralin. If you look up the pronunciation for it, like, good luck saying it, because it's like the French version of Cinderella or something. I can't say it. I can't say it. So I'm just going to say Sendralin. I'm sorry. But yeah, the Sendralin fight was pretty interesting. I found it interesting that they were all struggling to beat just Sendralin, even though like Accelerator, Mikoto, and like some others were there all together and they couldn't really do anything against her. I liked her power, being based off of Cinderella, and it was interesting because there's something like it was representative of like the glass slipper, and basically if your feet are bigger than hers, then your toes will get severed. And if your feet are shorter than hers, then they like forcibly expand to be able to fit the technical or imaginary glass slipper. So yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting power. And then no one could do anything against her, no matter how overpowered they were. Like, they even had Accelerator. I will say it was a little bit disappointing that Accelerator wasn't able to, I guess, do a little bit more, because he doesn't, at this point, he doesn't really know how to deal with magic exactly. I don't know if that changes later on, but that should be interesting. But I loved the resolution to this fight so much. Lavinia literally hits Senderlin with a truck. I thought that was amazing. That was hype. It was hilarious. Lavinia, I never loved her more than at that moment. Legitimately, she just plows through a wall and just hits Senderlin with the bus, and Senderlin didn't die. That's a strong woman, if I've ever seen one. Another side note, but as I've been reading these volumes, I am extremely disappointed that there's not more fan art of so many of these characters that I want to see fan art of. Why there's not very much Senderlin fan art out there, and that makes me sad, because I like Senderlin. And then there's Saronia. So what I saw someone say that Saronia wasn't a memorable antagonist. And I'll go ahead and say here, the two main antagonists of this arc, Saronia and Olay Blueshake, which I have something to say about the way Kazuma Kamachi names characters. Really? Olay Blueshake? I don't know, man. The names are hilarious, though. Kazuma Kamachi comes up with some really weird names. Anyways, I'll go ahead and say I really liked a lot of things about Saronia and Olay Blueshake. So I want to get to Saronia first. Well, first of all, I'll say Saronia's power, I didn't fully understand exactly what it was. I would need to like reread it, but it seemed to be based off of this the Leshy, which I had never heard of Leshy before. I honestly don't remember what the full explanation of her ability was, but she was like controlling these children. I think she's like giving them weapons or something, which I thought was kind of messed up. But I want to talk about, I'm kind of skipping around. I'm not like trying to recap the story or anything, but I liked Saronia's motive a lot. And it was so interesting. It was funny because as she was ranting about basically what her motive was, Toma was basically just not listening. He was basically not paying attention. He was like doing other stuff and thinking about other stuff while she was going on her like monologue. But I thought what she was talking about was really interesting from like a world building standpoint and a political standpoint. So basically, Saronia joined Gremlin because, well, I believe she's from Russia, and Russia obviously lost in World War III against Academy City, and so Academy City was basically helping the countries they defeated, mainly Russia, rebuild. And as they were doing this, they were basically reconstructing Russia in the way that they wanted to. So basically, they were reassessing Russia's power and resources and neglecting to essentially rebuild Russia the way it was before, or to the best state that you can reconstruct Russia. And I don't believe it was just Russia, if I'm remembering correctly. They were actually manipulating like all the countries or probably most of the countries' resources and whatnot that they had beaten in World War III. And Saronia essentially just wanted to get Academy City out of her country because she is rather nationalistic. So I really liked this because this is I think this is an accurate representation of like the after effects of war in real life, and I thought it was a very nice detail to throw in there. But I guess no one else really appreciated that about Saronia. I don't know. I really thought that was interesting. I mean, personally, I love the politics of Index. The politics and the world building of Index, I think, is absolutely fantastic. It's one of my favorite things about the series. Now I want to talk about Olay Blueshake. Olay Blueshake actually, in my opinion, represents a legitimate and relevant problem in the world right now. So this is everything that Olay Blueshake owns. She owns all major cell phone companies, all newspaper companies, all major search engines, multiple professional sports teams, and a specialty news channel. And on top of that, she's a leading figure in construction, real estate, and the freaking automobile industry. Olay Blueshake is just like the pinnacle of a corporatist. You could say Olay Blueshake herself is a monopoly. It's actually insane. And the amount of control and influence that she has in the American public is completely insane. Roberto Kotz even says that he could not have been elected if he didn't have the support of Ole Blueshake. She is entirely in control of whatever narrative she wants to spread throughout the news and newspapers, and it's just she has so much control and so much influence. When I say this is a legitimate, relevant problem, is that we see that most corporations are owned by, or most of the media is owned by the same few companies. And even with how few of these companies own so much, they're still trying to buy each other out. Just recently, like we just saw Sony actually bought out Crunchyroll, I believe. Sony already owned Funimation, so now Sony has literally monopolized the anime streaming market. It's theirs entirely. And then I thought this was an interesting thing. I looked this up. So now this was written in 2012, but this from Business Insider says these 6 corporations control 90% of the media in America, and those 6 corporations are Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, CBS, News Corp, and GE. The amount of power and influence that these companies have it's absurd, and they have so much control over the information that we get. And that was a large part of Ole Blueshake's character, is that she has so much control and so much influence that she can warp the news to her liking if she wanted to. So that was the main thing that I thought was super interesting about Ole Blueshake. But then her character went in a direction that I was not expecting. So Ole Blueshake's, now keep in mind Ole Blueshake was essentially just a puppet being used by someone else, which is a common theme in Tuaru. My goodness, so much of New Testament so far has been people being manipulated by another person. They think their plan, they have their own specific ideology and plan for whatever it is they're trying to do, but yet someone above them is just leading them in a specific direction, and I think that's really interesting. But okay, so the direction that Ole Blueshake went in that I was not expecting is that she wants to turn America into a theocracy. It's like, okay, I'm a Christian, but I don't think the church should be our government. But I just thought this was so interesting. I wrote down here in my notes, it says she acknowledged the fact that, or she pointed out the fact that the country was founded on Protestant Christian values, which is entirely true. But actually, one of the reasons she wanted to make America a theocracy was because she believed that it would help them defend America against the occult and, magic users and whatnot. Since in World War III, they made sure to note that America would not have stood much of a chance against magic users because they're just not as knowledgeable. Or that basically just the government would be able to defend against magic users, pretty much, under the current government system. Honestly, this is radical. It's a radical opinion, but it's not founded from an evil motive, in my opinion. That's what I love about Tuaru villains, is that they're never fully detestable. It's not like they're just doing evil things for their own evil deeds. They're not comically evil. They actually have interesting ideologies, and their motives are usually rather compelling at times. Now, with anyone that's this radical and literally wants to overthrow the current government system, she definitely did bad things for sure. Let's see. I wrote down in my notes where it goes wrong is her willingness to go through with unethical human experimentation for the purpose of improving America. I also wrote in my notes that Ole could legitimately conquer a third world country and create her own theocracy as a new nation if she wanted to. I mean, she literally hired this really expensive military, so I think she can do that. By the way, I don't mean to get too political, because I'm trying to not state hardly any of my actual opinions on anything, at least not to a divisive extent, but I don't like talking about politics on on my YouTube channel or anything, but this volume is just so political that I really felt like it was kind of inevitable. And I don't think I'm saying anything controversial. I'm just pointing out what I thought about this and why I thought it was so interesting. Oh, and I missed something when I was talking about Saronia. Well, I pretty much talked about it, but there was a specific thing that she said that I meant to bring up. And she says, on top of that, which she's talking about Academy City, are, and I think maybe the US as well, are remaking our country as they see fit by controlling the flow of money being sent in the name of war restorations. And then she also says, I'm going to read the whole thing here. It says, winter is coming. They have requisitioned, the natural gas pipelines, claiming it so they can repair them, but they are delaying that work for the sake of clearly unnecessary construction. They know full well that heating is a lifeline there in the winter, but they are having people swear their loyalty. You see, in this situation, you really can't even take a side because every country is just doing something bad. And that's realistic. That's one thing I really love about Index, is that it's kind of morally gray at times. There is no clear good guy and bad guy a lot of the times. Anyway, so to talk about something other than just the antagonist of this arc, and that was the main thing I really had to talk about. But another detail that I really liked about this arc was the cameras. So basically every subchapter, every part started, the first line would always be what camera was viewing the main characters throughout this pretty much the whole story, because Olay Blueshake, I believe, was monitoring everything. And so every single time a subchapter or whatever would start off by telling you which camera, and I thought that was a nice little detail. Also, can I just say that's the biggest privacy invasion in the entire world? Olay Blueshake, what are you doing? Another thing was, I really like Mikoto's just undying sort of loyalty for Toma. She is constantly throughout New Testament, she has made it clear how much she cares about Toma and how much she is willing to do to help him. I mean, volume 2 ended with her telling him that she can help him or whatever, and then he literally takes her with him to Hawaii. I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah, I don't know. I really love Mikoto, and can I just say, I have a little side tangent. I see a lot of people that just don't like Mikoto, or they like to express how much they hate Mikoto or think she's overrated or blah blah blah. It's okay, if you don't like Mikoto, I have a hard time understanding why you even like this series, because she's plastered all over this series. It's not even wrong to say that she's the poster child or whatever, that she's the face of this series because of, if you just don't like her because she's popular, or if you don't like her because of how many people think that Railgun is better than Index just because of the anime adaptation, I can understand where your frustration would come from, but I don't think Mikoto is a bad character by any stretch of the imagination. I think she's a fantastic character, and it's weird to me to hate her so much, as she's kind of, in a way, the face of the series, in the sense that she is the most popular, but she's also just the focal point of the marketing for this series. If you really can't stand her, then you're saying you can't stand a character that is so constantly present throughout this entire series. If you really hate a character that is so involved with the story, why do you even consume the story? I can understand people thinking her character is quote-unquote overrated, which I hate that word. I could make a video about why I hate that word. But most people just seem to dislike her for the sake of being a hipster, or to own the railgun onlys or something. I don't know. I guess I think it's just a loud minority, really. I think it's just a few people that are really loud about it. Anyways, that was my little side tangent. Let's talk about New Testament 3. Well, I actually don't have too much else to say. I do like how the volume pretty much ends with Lavinia. Pretty much, it's inferred that she was deceiving Toma, and Toma was questioning if she was actually in Gremlin, which we find out pretty soon that she's not. She's in a group that opposes Gremlin. I will say, I also I really loved Lavinia throughout this arc. I thought she actually kind of dominated parts. I kind of thought she was carrying for a large part of this arc, and you know what? I'm not complaining. I did have a minor complaint about well, two things. I had a complaint about Toma's fight with Saronia. I don't know why. I guess I just didn't think the fight was all that interesting. The fight itself, I liked the monologue and I liked the monologue from Saronia, but I didn't really care too much about the fight. I did kind of like Toma trying to like break down or find out what her power was. That was kind of interesting. I had completely forgotten about this, but I think Saronia actually does headbutt Toma, and for some reason I thought that was funny. But one of my other complaints was I was a little confused because there was a moment where like Toma and Kuroyoru were together and they were like stuck or they were like surrounded or whatever. And then Kuroyoru remembered something about Esper's using magic and having a side effect. And so what confused me was she used magic and then it had this extremely convenient effect or something. It seemed a little too coincidental, I guess. It seemed a little too lucky, and I wasn't sure how Kuroyoru actually used magic. How would she have even known how to do that? That's what I was confused about. If anyone has an answer for that without any like major spoilers for anything past New Testament 7, please tell me. Or if I just missed something. But yeah, I overall really enjoyed New Testament 3, really enjoyed the Hawaii invasion arc. And I could go into more detail if I want to, but I don't want this video to be too long, so I'll try to get through this a little bit faster. So next is New Testament 4. New Testament 4! The Baggage City arc. And I will say, as of right now, up from 1 through 7, I would say Baggage City is probably my favorite arc. Right off the bat, I want to say one reason Tuaru is a fantastic series, one reason that it is a one-of-a-kind series, is because Kazuma Kamichi can write an entire novel about characters we know literally nothing about beforehand, and somehow it's still outstanding. The only character that we really knew anything about beforehand was obviously Toma, and Toma showed up like a little bit at the beginning. He got knocked out and like disappeared, and then he showed up like at the very end. Every other character was a character that was either introduced in that volume or was like mentioned or said like just one thing or something in past volumes. Like Maria, Kumakawa Maria, she was mentioned just very briefly. She had a very like short subchapter, and that was all. We didn't know anything else about her character. So before starting this volume, I remember that when it started, I legit thought this was going to be a tournament arc. Based off of the introduction to this, I legit thought it was going to be a tournament arc because of the way they presented it. And so I was like oddly hyped in a weird way. If anyone knows like the Giga tournament arcs meme, but it ended up not really being an actual tournament. But that's whatever. That's besides. But it was still a good volume. Okay. One thing I also want to point out was that I love the way that this volume was formatted. It was formatted so like usually a 2-hour volume, of course, as you know, if you've read, has from 4 to 5 chapters, and they're very long. So like a lot of these volumes are anywhere from like the high 200s to the high 400s of pages, and there's only ever like 4 or 5 chapters, never really more than that. So chapters are very, very long. I really enjoyed the formatting of this volume, and there was like 37-ish. I think it was about like 30-something chapters. And I prefer this format, and I thought it was very thoughtful of Kamichi to change it up for this specific arc, because he said he wanted this arc to be filled with like this element of surprise where you don't know what's going to happen based off of like the length of a chapter, right? You can't really predict anything in this volume, and I really liked that. I honestly kind of wish he would do that more often. But yeah, I forgot to mention that the reason that this arc even started was because a lot of companies that were working for Academy City, but I can't remember if they were based in Academy City or if they just worked for them or were employed by them or whatever. A lot of them pretty much were boycotting Academy City as a result of what happened in New Testament 3. And it's so weird. They decided, it's weird but interesting, which I find myself saying a lot with Index. But they decided to hold this tournament arc so that whoever won would be considered the replacement to Academy City's espers. Essentially, they would have their own sort of symbol of power. But of course, like a lot of things in this series, they were just puppets. Like this was never actually going to happen. They were all just being led to this. Anyways, the tournament ended up going haywire really early on. I thought it was going to be like a full-on tournament arc, but it wasn't. No, it went pretty haywire, like almost immediately. And there was some pure insanity in this volume. Like there was some really crazy stuff going on in this volume. There was like this war against like Gremlin versus the Kiharas, and I didn't know just how many Kiharas there actually were. There's a lot of Kiharas. That what Kiharas are is so interesting. It's so weird. But early on, Kihara Ransu is he's crazy. He's actually mentally insane. So first of all, he has like this thing where he can like make people see illusions or whatever. But he gets this guy, and he like, I think he like sat him in a chair or something. I don't remember. But he basically performs this like cruel experiment on this dude just for fun. And it was basically like he had this guy's family like tied up or whatever in chairs or something. And he basically was forcing him to play Russian roulette with his family. It was like his wife, his daughter, grandchildren, and I think like his son-in-law, so like his daughter's husband. And he pretty much had to play Russian roulette. He had to choose to kill one of them. And so obviously he went with the son-in-law, because like why would he kill, you know, his own blood, right? But anyways, the entire exchange was just basically a psychological torture scene. And I was like, wow, they really did this. It was really crazy. And then the twist was even weirder. The twist was like Kihara Ransu was actually in an illusion the entire time. I think it was Loki who, I don't even know if Loki's dead now. Loki just showed up. And I think like he put Ransu in illusion, I think, and then he like beat him to death, like papers or something. I don't even remember. I can't fully remember. But it was absolute absurdity. I'm also kind of wondering if Loki's ever going to show up again, because Loki has a really cool power. It was he can basically what did I write in my notes? I said he can transfer information from one of your senses to another. That's kind of cool. And yeah, and I think when Loki knocked out what was his name? Ransu. I think then Toma came up behind him, and I guess Toma knocked him out because Loki did not show up again for the rest of the volume. So I guess he got knocked out. In general, though, the Kiharas are just, they kind of terrify me. I'm gonna be real. Like, the Kiharas kind of terrify me. There's so many of them, and they're so psychotic and willing to do anything for the sake of science or whatever it is that they're particularly pursuing, and they will just do extremely cruel things. Like they're the last people I'd ever want to be in the same room with, and that's there's so many of them. There's so many. There was like thousands of them or something. I don't know, man. There was like so many of them. Like how much are they breeding a lot or something? Are they horny? So yeah, moving away from the Kiharas, there was also probably two of my favorites, if not my two favorites from this volume. You know, I would say my two favorites, but Kumikawa Maria and Omi Shuri. They felt like the only two characters that were not just completely psychopathic. Maria, who I'm calling, okay, so there's Maria and then there's Marianne. I'm going to be pronouncing it this way because this is how I'm assuming that they're going to pronounce it in Japanese. I don't think they would say Maria and Marianne, even though these are kind of like American-ish names. But I'm assuming that they're actually going to be pronouncing it as Maria and Marianne. So that's kind of why I'm pronouncing it that way. But yeah, she was basically here to search for Kihara Kagun, who is the only like not completely terrible Kihara, I guess. Also known as Bersi or Belisi. Man, I have a lot of characters to talk about in this volume because there's a lot of them, and a lot of them are new. But anyways, Maria and Omi were probably the two most enjoyable to me. They were probably my two favorites. I just want to say, first of all, Maria's design and Omi's design, honestly, are super cute. I love both of their designs a lot. I really like Maria's colors as well. She's like this red, no, not red. Why did I say that? This like black and gold or black and yellow maid. While Omi, and I think Cosmocometry in the afterword explained the difficulties of designing Omi, because she's like a 30-plus-year-old woman in the body of a 10-year-old who's like a ninja crossed over with like a cheerleader outfit, and it's really cute. I like the costume a lot. I like the outfit a lot. I really like it. Now, I did already know about Omi beforehand because I've read Railgun. You know, she does show up in the Jailbreaker arc. She's not super relevant, but she does show up. So I did kind of know a little bit more about her. I feel like she had a lot more personality in the Jailbreaker arc than she did in Baggage City. But considering like the circumstances, I can understand why the atmosphere was a lot more tense in Baggage City. But Omi's basically what she was trying to do is she was exploring magic. She was trying to record footage of it so she could bring it back to her tribe and they could consider adopting magic and I guess rise again in power or something like that. It was a pretty interesting motive. I actually kind of liked it. I thought it was a bit different than what we're used to. On the other hand, we had Maria, who was essentially in love with Kihara Kagun, which at first I thought might have been a little weird, but then I realized I think he's fairly young. I don't think he's in his 30s yet. Correct me if I'm wrong. Hey, he's a handsome man. He is a handsome man. I can understand Maria falling for a man like that. And it was pretty much inferred that he was, because Kihara Kagun, who's a great character, by the way, because he was this sort of teacher-esque figure, I think he was a teacher, he was involved in this program called Student Keeper. And this program was pretty much designed to essentially just keep kids in school, right? Kids that were ditching classes and whatnot. And I guess we can assume that Maria was one of those students and that he is the reason that, you know, she started attending classes again. So we can kind of infer a lot that happens in between. And then we find out that Kihara Kagun was, he pretty much made an enemy out of Kihara Biori, I believe her name was. And she essentially like manipulated this kid to try to like kill Kagun or kill a student or whatever. I can't remember exactly. And he pretty much, because he's a Kihara, it is in his blood to react extremely and kind of violently to that. And so he killed that kid. Even though that kid was trying to kill them or him or students or whatever, he had to kill that kid to protect them. So even though the court system or whatever pretty much proved that he was innocent or, you know, found him to be innocent, and no one really blamed him and actually kind of praised him for protecting the students, he wasn't only upset about the fact that he killed that kid, or he was more upset about the fact that she tried to turn that kid into a murderer and that she would do it again because she wants Kihara Kagun to give up. Essentially, that's her philosophy, is all about giving up. So yeah, basically he left Academy City and ended up joining what, you know, we now know is Gremlin. Although first and foremost he met Marianne, but that's something else entirely. But he was basically plotting revenge against Biori the entire time that, you know, after he left. And he pretty much planned from the beginning that he would give his own life in order to take her life. And it was because he also didn't really believe himself to be redeemable. Kihara Kagun, very interesting character. I think he was outstanding. And Maria, to get back to Maria, she was pretty much chasing after him. And that's why she went to Baggage City, because it is pretty much inferred that she was in love with him and she wanted to find the truth of that situation. Also, Maria had this kind of weird thing about having her pride damaged. I don't know. Another thing to note about Maria is that I love her fighting style. It seems super fun. The whole theory about it is that I think she's just like extremely flexible and like she can basically fight using not only her arms, like her arms and legs, as if they operate and function similarly. I would love to see that in action. If this, you know, if New Testament does get an anime, which I believe it will one day. I don't know when, but I believe it will. But I think watching her fight's going to be pretty fun. Also, I loved her introduction in this volume as well. like Omi's in a fight with this dude that like sneaks up on her basically, and it's just this illustration of her basically sitting on this man's face. Gosh, I wish that were me. So next up, I want to talk about Marianne Slingnair. I don't know how to say her name. I'm going to call her Marianne, all right? I was not ready for Marianne. Her power is it's grotesque, and I'm a little suspicious of Kazuma Kamachi's like mental health after reading about it. This woman can straight up like modify human bodies into just whatever she wants, like any object she can think of, and they're still alive while she does that. She literally turned Sendralin into a table. She turned a dude's hands into faucets, and I was so confused when I read it. I was like, oh, is this a different type of faucet that I'm thinking? No, bro, literally faucets, like a sink faucet. She's insane. Yeah, and then she fights Maria and Omi, and that was a really fun fight. I really enjoyed that fight. It was pretty tense. I liked the choreography, and I liked how Omi just use her weirdo ninja techniques to just mess with her. I thought it was pretty great to see Omi basically chasing Marianne. It was satisfying. Another character throughout this was Enshu, and I'll say Enshu is very cute and I guess very un-Kihara-like, and she basically just copies other Kiharas, and that's her whole thing. But not only does she do that, she ends up copying other people as well. We see her trying to copy like Toma, and I don't know. It was interesting, I guess. She was kind of funny, and in a psychotic sort of way. But I guess I didn't care too much about her character outside of that. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention there was a cool twist where there's a character named Sigen, I believe that's how you pronounce it, and I think it's a she was like captured beforehand, and then Omi had imitated her voice on the phone with Marianne. That was pretty sick. That was, or something like that. That was pretty sick. I really liked that. But now I have to get into the absurdity that was what the whole point of Baggage City was. So I was kind of dumbfounded. I don't know if dumbfounded. I was caught off guard when an entire chapter was dedicated to explaining the scientific theory of the experiment that Gremlin was trying to pull off. I thought this was fascinating. Kind of hard to understand, but I think I got the gist of it, and I thought it was fascinating, and it really did catch me off guard. So I'm going to read from my notes here, and this is going to be a long video. I'm just not realizing this. I'm going to be reading my notes here. So basically, the whole point of the Baggage City thing was it was this gigantic, holistic experiment that would give them something akin to Esper powers, but like a new category power, something like level 6 as a comparison. And so the theory was that so the closer you are to moving at light speed, the slower time moves for you. If you apply that theory to the concept of the entire universe, because if you, of course, you probably know the universe is always expanding, right? It's literally never ending, and I guess you could say the universe is constantly still being created, if you want to view it that way. And so Kazuma Kamachi brings up a thought experiment. I think he literally says thought experiment in the novel. He says, what if one specific region of the universe started expanding at a different speed than the rest of the universe? This blew my mind because I had never even considered anything like this before. Like, this is what sci-fi is all about. But yeah, basically, if one part of the universe started expanding at a different speed, then this would create a sort of distortion. And to create this, to pull this off, basically that's why they had Gremlin and the Kiharas fight. So I said in my notes here, similar to that special metal thing. It made me think of the metal thing brought up during one of the Railgun arcs. I can't remember which one, but it was like a special metal that would be created when large groups of Esper abilities clash. So it was kind of similar in nature to that, by getting a bunch of really powerful magic users and really powerful like science side people and having them clash to create this distortion. in this specific area, and this actually succeeded. And I believe that's why the citizens disappeared. I believe they were actually like technically in another dimension, and in that dimension it was stated that, I think this was meant to be literal, but it stated that tragedies were more likely to occur because obviously a different dimension would work under probably like a different set of physics, right? There'd be different laws in that dimension that we know in our dimension. That was the best I could do to simplify what happened. I thought it was super interesting, and this is what I like about sci-fi, is just making me think about things that I never would have thought about it in that way. I never would have even questioned that, and I just thought it was so interesting. And then, like, okay, while they're in this dimension, there's Omi, Maria, and I think Safli, right? So I think it was Safli Open Days. Another weird name. What's up with the names, man? There's so many weird names. Whatever. And then Marianne just whips out this crazy sword, and then this sword was crazy, bro. She literally didn't even have to like pull it out to do anything. They just like insta-killed them. And it was the coolest thing ever. Like, up to where I am, Maria, it's still not even confirmed if Maria and Omi are alive. Now, okay, I looked at the wiki. Yeah, they are. Okay, well, actually, no, I'm wrong. Maria is alive, definitely. I didn't mean Maria. I meant Safli, because Maria got out of that dimension without being attacked by Marianne. I meant Omi and Safli. But it's still not even confirmed up to where I am if Safli and Omi are actually alive. But I will admit that I looked at the wiki and I saw that it said they were alive. So that's nice. But yeah, man, then we got this extremely cool scene of Toma like ripping through the distortion, and I thought that was I just thought that was sick. Just period. I just thought that was sick. It looked awesome. And I'm not gonna recap the entire fight or anything, but then Othinus shows up. So the character that I've heard so many people simp over, says like one of the best characters in the series, and has the best arc in the series and what all. I have to say her introduction was really, really cool. It's very mystic, She just like casually severed Toma's right hand, and like something came out of his right hand, and I don't remember exactly what it was. I'd have to go read over that again, because it was really late when I was actually reading that, and it was the most. It's like the most I had ever read in a session, like up to this point. I read like 200 pages or something, which I usually can't read that much in one sitting. But yeah, my honestly, by the end of this, my mind was kind of numb. But after I finished it, I kept thinking about Baggage City for a hot minute. Yeah, and then Olaris shows up, and then there's some talk about the magic gods, and he's not a magic god, but he could have been, or he should have been. And then this whole thing about 50-50 infinite possibilities or whatever, which we actually do see an example of later, which I'll bring up. But yeah, you know what? Baggage City, amazing arc. Amazing arc. I was really caught off guard by a lot of things about it, and it was very crazy. It was very chaotic, and I really enjoyed that. It kind of gave me, like, when I read it, it gave me Battle Royale, the Battle Royale arc vibes, which is OT 15, I believe. And I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, up to this point, I would say Baggage City, probably my favorite arc so far. Hello, this is me a few days after the recording you just heard, and this video ended up being so long, and I figured, you know what, no one's trying to watch a 2-hour video, right? So I'm going to cut it in half, so this part's just going to be about 1 hour or whatever it ends up being. And I'm going to upload my thoughts on volumes 5 through 7 in a different video. Yeah, I figured no one was going to sit through 2 hours of me talking about 7 volumes, so probably better just split it up. And by the way, I'm still like not an index channel per se. Like, I do upload other stuff, and I will be uploading other stuff. I know I've been mostly focused on Tuaru lately, but I do have other videos planned and coming out, though I've been super slow. But yeah, I will hopefully get around to that. So anyways, thank you for watching if you did. Tell me what you think about these volumes specifically. Tell me what your thoughts were when you read these arcs. And I do mean it when I say I want to hear what you guys have to say about the arcs, because I actually get pretty excited seeing notifications, seeing comments on the videos for this channel. it's just the comments I get on this channel are often just so well thought out and very nice. And, you know, I recognize a lot of the people in the comments. You know, I actually watch a lot of Tuaru related channels myself, and I see the same group of people commenting on all those channels. So I find that pretty cool. But yeah, I think that's gonna wrap it up here. If you somehow watch this entire video, you are a maniac, and I appreciate you greatly. Leave any thoughts you have in the comments down below. I promise I'll get to it, unless I just don't know what to say. But yeah, I think that's gonna be it for me today. I love Index, and you know what? I hope you have a nice day, night, week, month, year, decade, life.